Hey class, we're back, and this is our last lesson on ancient Mesopotamia. It's the Persian Empire, uh, and the Persian Empire was the last of big the big empires before all of Mesopotamia fell, and it fell to the Greeks. Alexander the Great is who it fell to, and we'll get more into that as we go along. But I mean, if you can see here, I mean, it was huge. The Persian Empire stretched over like 3,000 miles, and which is as big as the United States. And at the time, it was the largest empire in the world. From coast to coast in the United States, so from North Carolina to California, it's 3,000 miles, and that's how long it stretched. So without further ado, that's what we're talking about today. So as I said, the first Persian Empire took control of the Middle East, after the fall of the Babylonian Empire. And it's also called the Achaemenid. I'm sorry, Achaemenid. I think that I'm saying that's right. I say it right in the reading, but we'll see if I say it right here.
Fall of Babylon. The first Persian Empire took control of the Middle East after the fall of the Babylonian Empire. It is also called the Achaemenid Empire.
Achaemenid. The Achaemenid Empire. I said it wrong when I said it here, but I said it right on the video or on the presentation, so that's the best name. So, all right. So the empire was founded by this man right here. This is Cyrus the Great. All right, he first conquered the Median Empire in 550 BC, and he went on, and the empire grew and it ruled all of Mesopotamia. It had some of Egypt in it, it had Israel, it had Turkey, and like I said, it stretched over 3,000 miles from east to west, and it was the largest empire on earth at the time.
Cyrus the Great. The empire was founded by Cyrus the Great. Cyrus first conquered the Median Empire in 550 BC and then went on to conquer the Lydians and the Babylonians. Under later kings, the empire would grow to where it ruled Mesopotamia, Egypt, Israel, and Turkey. Its borders would eventually stretch over 3,000 miles from east to west, making it the largest empire on earth at the time.
Just remember, this empire was founded by Cyrus the Great. The Persian Empire was. So under Cyrus the Great, though, they did things a little bit different than other empires that conquered places. They allowed the people they conquered to keep their lives and their culture if they paid their taxes and obeyed the Persian rulers. So if they did that, they allowed them to keep their own lives, their own culture. And this was different from the earlier people such as the Assyrians. Assyrians didn't do that. They made you, when they conquered you, hey, you had to adapt to their ways.
Different cultures. Under Cyrus the Great, the Persians allowed the people they conquered to continue their lives and cultures. They could keep their customs and religion as long as they paid their taxes and obeyed the Persian rulers. This was different from how earlier conquerors, such as the Assyrians, had ruled.
So in order to maintain control of this large empire, they had a ruler called a satrap. All right, and he enforced the king's laws, he enforced the king's taxes, and there were around 20 to 30 of these satraps in the empire. They were called satraps.
Government. In order to maintain control of the large empire, each area had a ruler called a satrap. The satrap was like a governor of the area. He enforced the king's laws and taxes. There were around 20 to 30 satraps in the empire.
So the empire was connected by a lot of different roads. They built a lot of roads in this empire, and they had a postal system, all right, which is pretty cool. Postal system, they could send mail to each other. So, but the most famous road was the Royal Road, and it was built by King Darius the Great. This is the Royal Road. It went from Sardis to Zuma. All right.
Government continued. The empire was connected by many roads and a postal system. The most famous road was the Royal Road built by King Darius the Great. This road stretched around 1,700 miles all the way from Sardis in Turkey to Zuma in Elam.
All right, and even though they allowed other cultures they conquered to keep their own religion, The Persians followed the teaching of Zoroaster or Zoroaster. All right, and he believed the main god in this was called Ahura Mazda. So they had their own ways, even though they would allow people to keep their own culture when they conquered them and they took control of them. They believed in Zoroaster, the teachings of Zoroaster or Zoroaster, and then they believed in one main god, and it was Ahura Mazda. That's the name of it.
Religion. Although each culture was allowed to keep their own religion, the Persians followed the teaching of the prophet Zoroaster. This religion was called the Zoroastrianism and believed in one main god called Ahura Mazda.
All right, so under King Darius, this man right here, all right, it's King Darius. He wanted to conquer the Greeks, all right, and we've talked about Greece and we've talked about Thermopylae and all that when we talked about Greece last year. But he felt the Greeks were causing rebellion, and so he went to war with them. He captured some Greek city-states because they had city-states just like Mesopotamia did. But when he attempted to take Athens, which was their big city-state, he was defeated by the Athenians at the Battle of Marathon. This is the Battle of Marathon down here.
Fighting the Greeks. Under King Darius, the Persians wanted to conquer the Greeks, who he felt was causing rebellions within his empire. In 490 BC, Darius attacked Greece. He captured some Greek city-states, but then he attempted to take the city of Athens. He was soundly defeated by the Athenians at the Battle of Marathon.
All right, so fighting the Greeks continued. Darius' son, Xerxes the First, took over, and he wanted to finish what his father started. He wanted to conquer all of Greece. So he had this big, huge army of hundreds of thousands of people, and he won the Battle of Thermopylae against a small army in Sparta. Okay, if you've ever seen the movie 300, that's where that comes from. But as they went along, he could not defeat them. He was soundly defeated. Their navy was at the Battle of Salamis, and he was eventually forced to retreat from Greece. 300, the part 2, I think, is about the Battle of Salamis.
Fighting Greeks continued. In 480 BC, Darius' son, Xerxes I, attempted to finish what his father started and conquer all of Greece. He amassed a great army of hundreds of thousands of warriors. This was one of the largest armies assembled during ancient times. He initially won the Battle of Thermopylae against a much smaller army from Sparta. However, the Greek fleet defeated his navy at the Battle of Salamis, and he was eventually forced to retreat.
All right, so the fall of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire got big, and it was powerful for hundreds of years, but it was eventually conquered by this man right here. This is Alexander the Great. He was from Greece, and in 334 BC, Alexander the Great, he conquered the Persian Empire from Egypt all the way to India, from the borders all the way to India. So, and we'll talk more about him as we talk about Greece later on this year again.
Fall of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was conquered by the Greeks, led by Alexander the Great. Starting in the year 334 BC, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire from Egypt all the way to the borders of India.
All right, so who was the Persian Empire founded by? Was it A, Cyrus the Great, B, Sargon, or C, Naram-Sin? It was A, Cyrus the Great is who it was founded by, the Persian Empire.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number 2, what did Cyrus the Great allow countries they conquered to do if they paid taxes? A, nothing. B, continue their culture and their lives. Or C, survive. B, he allowed them to continue their culture and their lives as long as they paid taxes. They had to pay taxes in order to do that. And it was different from the earlier ones like the Assyrians, because they made you a transfer to what they were doing, their culture. So what was the person who enforced taxes called for them? A, a satrap, B, a king, or C, an emperor? It was called a satrap. They had about 20 to 30 of them ruling over the land because it's such a big empire. And you had to pay taxes. You had to pay the taxes to these men. They were the ones who collected the taxes.
Ding, ding, ding. we have a winner.
Number 4, who was the one main god the Persians believed in? A, the sun god Shamash, B, Ahura Mazda, or C, Naram Sin? It was B, Ahura Mazda, is the one main god the Persians believed in.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
And our last one, who did the Persians eventually fall to? Who did they eventually fall to? A, the Romans, B, Egyptians, or C, the Greeks led by Alexander the Great? It was C, the Greeks is who they eventually fell to.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right. All right, class. Be sure to go through the reading on Schoology. Get credit for it. Turn it in. Get credit for it. If you have any problems with anything, come back to this and you can see the answers. And you can go back through it and you have the actual lesson talk to you again. There's also some videos for you to watch on there for parody videos about Mesopotamia, and this is all for Mesopotamia for this unit. So, but we'll be back next time. Our next video will be about the Middle Ages, and our next lesson will be about the Middle Ages. And I will talk to you all soon. You all have a good day.